I think that's also interesting too. You talk about set and setting, and we're using this word entheogen pretty liberally through this talk, but perhaps it's not the word that most people are familiar with. Maybe people are more familiar with psychedelic or other types, hallucinogenic.
But not hallucinogenic. No. Let's not use that.
Of course not.
Because it very much pathologizes the substance, and that's a sociocultural view to use that. Initially, there are even worse terms like psychotomimetic, right? This mimics psychotic states. Well, it can, I suppose, yes, but it has many other possibilities. So psychedelic refers right to the consciousness expanding aspect of these substances, these sacred medicines. Connection, an upward and outward superconsciousness kind of direction, connection with the divine, with the cosmos, with aliens, things like that.
Mind manifesting is the original definition from Humphrey Osmond in 57.
Yes. So it's about the mind aspect. In entheogen, which we use preferentially, not because psychedelic is wrong, but because it's another important aspect of these substances, revealing the divine within, connection to the inner world, and even a revelation of the fractal nature of our fractal nature of our cosmos. As above, so below, and so the entire it's like, what's that, Blake's statement, to see eternity in a moment, and see the universe in the sand that you're holding in your hand, or something like that. So the patterns are repeated, from the way an atom is formed to the way a galaxy is formed, and so these meaningful relationships extend through all layers of the reality that we live in. And this is revealed to us more commonly by an entheogenic experience than any other way. Although it should be pointed out, that it may be Westerners who need entheogens more than anybody else, because in India, or everywhere now, but the whole Buddhist thing is to say that this reality that we're inhabiting is illusory, and they're all about talking about the spiritual realm and things like that, the transcendental realm, the transpersonal realm, and so you have a massive block of humanity, hundreds of millions of people who just take this as a fact of life. And Hindus are not far from that. So it's only we Westerners that have been mired into this very narrow materialist kind of worldview for some time. We need to break out of it.
And I think that actually speaks to something that I've been seeing happen pretty consistently in the news recently, which is it really speaks to how people are perceiving this word and how this word is being utilized in the media. For example...
Entheogen, you mean?
Entheogen or psychedelic. More psychedelic, because entheogen hasn't really shown up pretty consistently in the email, whereas psychedelic, through the newsletters and stuff like that, but psychedelic is pretty common. And
sure.
Recently I saw an article that said something like, these glasses reproduce the psychedelic effects of LSD. So far as I know, there are no glasses that reproduce the effects of entheogens. So that really speaks to how these terms are being perceived out there. Whether or not we have a different definition of them, we have to be aware that right now, psychedelic is kind of becoming this external sort of view of the world, a colorful sort of kaleidoscopic thing. That's what these glasses are representing, not the inner experience of like what happens inside and the insights that happen with
right.
So I think
also psychedelic is a little more related to the mental aspects of the function and features of sacred medicines. And our society is very mentally oriented, very yang, excessively so. So that which has led to denial of the feminine and things like that, and denial of the heart center and its importance, when in reality it's if you in an extreme form, if you had no brain but your heart was working fine, your body would continue to live. If your brain was fine and you had no heart, the brain would die too in like 2 seconds flat. So the heart center is actually, in a sense, the more important of the two. It shouldn't be an either or situation, of course. They're both necessary and important. But the mental should be guided by the heart, because in many traditions, especially in the integral traditions, which is a summation of the vast Vedic and Buddhist perspective, the heart is located in the cave, the soul is located in the cave of the heart. It's a metaphoric expression, but it means that it expresses itself through our hearts. That's why if you're talking to a used car salesman, he may be spinning your head with a beautiful rap, so you think, I got to go borrow some money to buy this pile of junk. But it's your heart that says, I don't know, man, I think you should stop and think about this. So our heart can actually lead us more guidance. But that requires the inward looking and inward experiencing that is not encouraged, and in fact is often discouraged by this reductionist materialist society.
For those that are still coming into ERIE vision, maybe perhaps even define reductionist materialist society. What does that mean in this context? How does that...
Oh, well, it arose out of atomism, which is sort of Platonic, or even it's Aristotelian. But that says that the atoms are the building block of the universe. If we could just find the atoms, we'd understand the construction of the entire universe, cosmos that we perceive. With the idea that somehow these primal particles would also be the source of existence. So we've discovered atoms and whatnot, but ultimately in quantum physics, right, we've discovered that they are not the source of anything. There is a source from which quarks and subatomic particles emerge out of nothingness in the quantum foam and briefly inhabit a life as part of an atom, which is part of something larger, and then goes back in zillionths of a second, appears and flashes back into nothingness. And then there's the whole Big Bang question, right? The reductionist materialists who want to define the nature of reality by the interaction of material particles say, we can explain everything if you just grant us one miracle, the Big Bang, right? Because everything supposedly came from nothing, but we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to say that we can predict, which implies ultimately control everything by calculating, interactions between material particles. Which means that ultimately the view of modern Western science, known as allopathy, is that we're just walking bags of chemicals that are accidentally alive somehow, and the functioning of this life also somehow, incidentally and unimportantly, generates consciousness as some kind of epiphenomenal foam, fluff from the working of the brain.
I think David Chalmers, was 1994 when he came up with the idea, the
hard
problem of consciousness, right?
Right.
And I think it's fascinating that that's the topic that no one, it's a pretty big deal. Like,
it's the elephant in the room.
How do we cross that? You have Hameroff that has the microtubule collapses, and you have all these different people who have had these theories and ideas, but no matter how far down you go, there's this mystery.
Right, and I think that one of Ken Wilber's better contributions was to point out in his book Integral Psychology that it's not really the hard problem, it's the impossible problem. Just theoretically, you cannot generate an algorithm that takes you from the material to the ephemeral. It's impossible. It's outside of human experience and possibilities.
We actually have